listeners, you made it. Destination Aviation. Thanks for tuning in. I'm your host, Jeff Miller. If it's your first episode, thanks for coming. If you're returning, thanks for coming back. We appreciate it. Wipe your feet, come on in. No, I'm fresh off the heels. I got a foot thing going on here. Wipe your feet, click your heels. Does that click your heels? Well, you know what? Where's it of today's a movie episode, so we're going to be good with movie references. But I'm fresh off the heels from a trip to EAA, AirVenture, Oshkosh, Whitman Regional Airport, however you want to call it. Fun in Wisconsin and aviation fun. Always great to see some friends from MBAA, AOPA, the airport director up there, Jim Shell, and I think I'm pronouncing that right. I never actually asked him how he pronounces his last name, so if I butchered it, I apologize for that. But we have a very, very awesome episode today. We'll follow up with some show notes here at the end. But today we're talking a little bit about aviation movies. It's a long episode, but it's a fun episode. Nate Hahn with the Evansville Regional Airport, he's the executive director there. He had a really good idea about movies and talking about movies on the podcast, and I love the idea. I didn't realize how much of a movie aficionado Nate is comparative to maybe where I'm at in life. So you're going to hear probably a real enthusiast of movies and detail-oriented, and then you're also going to hear from me. So without further, I will get right into the interview with Nate here, and then we'll follow up at the end with some notes. Well, as we said on the beginning here, we're having a conversation with Nate Hahn, the executive director of the Evansville. Is it international or regional? I apologize. I should have known that before I even started saying that.
Evansville Regional Airport.
Evansville Regional Airport. And I know the viewers won't be able to see this, but you can have the quintessential shot of an airport director, executive director, manager, all wrapped in one, in your office with the air traffic control tower, literally right behind your head.
It is wonderful. I was on a call with actually some friends that are non-aviation people, and one of them stopped in the middle of what he was talking about. I was like, Nate, I forget that you actually, work at an airport. See that? It's really hard to forget.
Why? Yeah, I was going to say, with a shot like that, it's like, it's very apparent you're working at the airport. It's beautiful, though. It's a beautiful office. Now, I know right before we got on, you're also right there by where you have your passengers park their vehicles, correct?
That is accurate. So out one window is a beautiful view of the air traffic control tower and part of our airfield. The other is every single passenger that comes to Evansville to look into my windows and see exactly what I'm doing. So if they had a magnifying glass or, they could be watching you if they had binoculars right now, watching you on my screen.
No FOIA request for Nate. You just see exactly what he's doing all the time.
Yep.
It's kind of like a show. You just go in, watch, see what you got going on for the day. Heck, I might fly down someday just to do that. Bring some popcorn, sit out there.
Get a lawn chair.
Yeah, right.
Bring an umbrella.
Well, Nate, you came to us with an interesting idea about movie topics and our favorite, I think, aviation-themed movies, which I loved your idea. I loved your thought there. But for our listeners, because we have a mix of listeners, people that both you and I know in the industry, and others that don't know really anything about what we do. So I thought maybe at least up front we could kind of talk about who you are, just so people know who Nate is, beyond the lovely picture you have behind you. I shouldn't say picture. The lovely reality you have behind you of the air traffic control tower.
Sure. So I've been in the industry about 20 years. I'm native of the state of Indiana. Grew up in the other end of the state, but I'm a very, very, very proud Purdue Boilermaker. Very proud. And then got the aviation administration degree from there. Got my start in Midland, Texas. I spent a few years there, kind of working my way up. And then came to Evansville. I'd been trying to get back to the Midwest. And came to Evansville in 2011 as director of operations and maintenance. And then as our previous executive director was nearing retirement, worked with our board to start a transition plan and took over officially January 1st of 2019.
I love that. That's awesome. And I can say, at least for the listeners, I see from your lanyard that you are a proud Purdue individual and alumni. And I guess I will say this, you should be. It's an awesome, amazing school. So our paths, I don't think, crossed too much. I worked up in South Bend earlier on, and I was listening to so you became executive director in 2019, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and then when did you start working in Evansville?
2011.
Okay, so we overlapped. I'm trying to remember in my own head here. We overlapped a little bit there. So I was doing some of the Indiana. I forget, what's your state organization called?
Aviation Indiana.
Aviation Indiana. And I think we crossed paths. I know I was confused on who was flying with your previous executive director on the aircraft he owned or the airport owned. Was that was another person that worked at the airport? That wasn't you, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So yourself, do you fly?
I do not.
You do not. Okay.
Do not. I had a former board member that was very pro Nate getting his pilot's license, and my response was, okay, if the board will pay for it, I would be glad to do that. I do not currently have it, so you can tell how that conversation went.
Yes, I can tell. But, well, if they're listening, maybe they'll change that. That too.
No, I mean he was an avid pilot and thought there was value in that. I've spent 20 years doing this plus a few years of education. If I don't know what I'm doing at this point, board, you have a different issue. Please don't tell me you need to be a pilot. But I will say, actually, we'll talk about it here as we talk through our film conversation. But I actually had people ask me questions, especially about aviation movies or from a pilot's perspective. Oh, what do you think happened? And I'm like, I don't know. Like. Too much rudder. I don't know. So I'll admit that there are things like that do occasionally come up that are like, okay, it'd be nice to know. But no, it's not high on my list of things to do.
Yeah, I've always said this. I don't think anybody that runs an airport needs to be a pilot. That I've always agreed with. I will say you hear a lot in reverse. If you're managing an airport and people are like, wait, you don't fly, or they'll be like, oh, wait, I'm a pilot, and so I'll tell you exactly how to run the airport. And it's like I kind of understand it in some ways, but it's also like, well, I do fly, but I fly a Cessna 172, and I wouldn't go to a Boeing 777 captain and say, here, let me show you a few things I think you're doing off here.
Yeah. And I think it's more common. The smaller the airport, I think it's more common.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right.
Because the needs of especially a small general aviation airport, you are not that. You are something different. But a small general aviation airport, I think you have a more closer relationship with the pilot community.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just because of the nature of the size.
Yeah.
And I don't. I mean, admittedly, we got a fixed base operator. They manage most attendants. So, I know a half dozen pilots, and that's really it in our community. I mean,
yeah,
I think that kind of disconnect as you get larger airports. I don't say higher up, but larger airports. I think that changes that. And commercial service versus general aviation versus like a corporate aviation airport. I think all those have different components there.
Yeah,
as well.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right there. I think it's funny because you talk to the youth that come and are interested in industry, which I always love, that they have interest in it and. They're like, well, what your pathway? And I'll explain my pathway, but I'm like, I've been doing this long enough, the same as you, that there's really no one, this is your trajectory. You go do this, 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 and this. It's kind of everybody finds their own pathway to get to where they want to be. And I do think, to something you said early on, there's a homing beacon if you were born in the Midwest to kind of draw you back, because I felt that a little bit over time as well as I moved across the country working at different airports. And there's something for me being back in the Midwest that I really enjoy. It's probably from my youth growing up, and we all have connections, stuff like that. But so when you said that, it did resonate with me because I felt the same about wanting to get back to the Midwest in my career.
And I think one of my favorite things I get to do, more so now as executive director than previous roles, is speak to students, whether it be local university that has no aviation program, or I've gotten to speak finally at my alma mater.
Wow. Okay.
And maybe last year or so. And then I speak to a lot of, Indiana State students or Southern Illinois Carbondale students. So I'll give shout outs to those programs that I do get to speak to them on a fairly regular basis. And that's one of the things I always talk about, right, is there's no single path. I'm going to tell you how I got here. In fact, my presentation at Purdue, I won't even call it a presentation. I walked in, and my opening line was, I prepared for this class as much as you guys did.
I love that. Did you get a good laugh?
I will say, I try to make a lot of jokes. My wife would tell you I make too many, and most are not funny. But overall, it was a pretty successful joke to laugh ratio.
I love
with
that.
with students that are 20 years younger than me. And but I opened with that, and then I went on like, I'm going to tell you how I got to where I'm at.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you the good stuff that happened to me to get me here. And I'm going to tell you some really poor decisions that I made, and other people around me I saw make that impacted their careers. And the question is always, if you ever give a presentation like that, the big thing is, when you're done, does anyone have questions? Like, were they engaged?
Right.
And I've been fortunate that every time I have finished out the time with lots of questions. And the biggest compliment anyone could ever give me was, as I was leaving the classroom at Purdue, a student came up to me and said, "Hey, I really appreciate everything you had to say. I appreciate your honesty and just the way you looked at things. So I really appreciate that." And then he says, and I wasn't even in the class. I'm like, "What do you mean?" He was an engineering student that someone else in the class said, "Hey, you should come listen to this guy."
Nice.
And so wasn't even an aviation student.
I love that.
But he appreciated enough to come up to me afterwards and give me that compliment. So, those are big wins for me.
No,
when you can talk to students and have an honest conversation about, there's parts of this career that are difficult, right? Be prepared to move.
Oh, yeah.
Be prepared to know that everyone in that room with you is your competition and your coworker. And that's it's just the nature of the industry.
No, absolutely. No, I think I love that. One, I'll say up front, I think you're on the right podcast for stupid jokes, because we love stupid jokes on this podcast. So please, if your wife's not, if you feel like at home you can't get all your stupid jokes out, throw them in here, because I love them. But I would also say, I think people really resonate. I'll say on my part, the bullshit meter that people can find in life, and they'll know that when someone's like, "Oh, your career has been too perfect and it was too linear and you never had some missteps." And I just had a podcast, it hasn't dropped yet, but I did with a student I met down in Atlanta at the AAAE conference annual, and she asked me a lot of questions, and a lot of the theme there was exactly what you just said, that it's not your career. You envision your career going a certain way, and you're like, "I want to do this, 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 and this," and then you realize life is going to go, "No, you're going to do this, 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 and this." But ultimately, even through your career progression, what you, at least for me at times, where I thought, "Oh, that's a step back," or "That's a sideways step," or something I don't like, ended up being really rewarding for my career. And I guess overall the theme would be enjoy your journey, because it may not be exactly what you expected it to be, but ultimately I find myself in a position I really love, and it sounds like the same for you down there in Evansville.
Very much so.
Now,
very, very much.
Real quickly on that front, you mentioned getting back to the Midwest. So is your family, your wife, are they all from the Evansville area, or just Indiana in general?
So yeah, I grew up in a small town in northern Indiana. My father grew up on a farm, and all of his siblings, he was one of 5, and all of the cousins, everyone lives within about a 20-mile radius of the original family farm.
Really?
I have one cousin that moved to Michigan, which was still like an hour away.
Right.
And then, so when I moved to Texas, like, this is a big deal. Like, black sheep, here I come. So again, very close with my family still. And then my wife is from the Evansville area, so we have 2 little ones now, and yeah.
Well, and I'll say, just from more of, I don't know, of an independent outside observer, because I don't know too much about Evansville, but I see, obviously, I'm in the industry, so I see a lot of the really good things you're doing down there and the wins that you've had with air carrier success. So I think they're probably lucky to have you at the helm there, as much as everybody can just watch you at the helm through your windows from the parking lot.
Exactly. Well, thank you. I had a very interesting conversation. We have a zoo here, and when I first moved to Evansville, again, over a decade ago, their executive director, I was at a meeting with him, and one of his comments was, our local zoo, Mesker Park Zoo, is never going to be San Diego Zoo.
Right.
But if we can take a piece of San Diego Zoo and bring it to our community, then that's a win for our community. And that is and that has resonated with me now for over a decade. Yeah. I'm not O'Hare, I'm not Atlanta, I have no desire to be those. but what we are is who we are, right? And so let's be the best version of ourselves. And I think we've had a lot of success with that, from air service standpoint, from a development standpoint, from trying to be progressive to help passengers and progressive to help the help the climate and make sure we're being good stewards of the land. And I'm very proud of some of the efforts we've made in those ways. So that is always in the back of my mind when we talk about how do I bring a piece of what someone much larger does to my community.
No, I love that. I think that's an amazing thought. And, it's funny because people ask me all the time, and it was similar. You mentioned some of this up front about size of airports and at some point in your career, like, yeah, bigger. And then, for me at least, it was no more management, culture, how the organization is structured, all those things that it's like that, to me, is probably the more important parts of aspects of an airport versus size. And to the point you just made about your community, I'm sure, people, I love airports the size of yours, right? Because you get the same access from there, one stop pretty much, or direct, go wherever you want. And, sometimes you get through some of these large airports, like O'Hare is my main airport here now. And there's attributes, obviously. You go through TSA and pretty much go where you want from that point. But it's a large complex. There's not as much as that human touch. And some of the smaller airports, like when I was in South Bend, I had probably the best relationships that I've had professionally with people at an airport that size, because you get to know your TSA agents really well. You get to know your air traffic controllers really well. And so, you get into a large complex like O'Hare, and, they do a lot of good things, but there's also, downsides, I would say, to the size where, it's hard to see kind of a uniformed management of, oh, Nate's running this place, this is his vision, and this is what he's doing. Because when you have so many employees and you have so many outside folks, it just becomes kind of this machine. And a place like yours, I love airports like yours, because you really can feel that sense of place. And I haven't been through the Evansville airport, but I'm assuming from the way you're describing it here, and just from the lovely view behind you, it's probably a nice place to catch a flight.
It is. One of the best compliments we've gotten was not one we had to pay for or anything, but an individual from a very, very, very large company, international, super huge company, was in speaking to for a women's conference here in Evansville. Yeah. And she, as her opening, said, we're her favorite small airport she's ever flown into.
I love that.
And this is someone I gather flies a lot. And so, and I wasn't there. I was like, one of those things, like, why do people give you compliments when you're not around to hear them? It'd be nice to, just once, I want someone to give me a compliment to my face.
Is it like that old thing about the tree falling in the woods? If a compliment is given and Nate can't hear it, is there still a nice feeling to it?
Yeah. So. But I will take it. Again, at least made it's way back to me.
Well, I think the reality is that, when you're a public servant, which is what really our jobs are at the end of the day, and I say this to myself, because there's times where, like, the community I live in, right? I don't know too much about, how the local train system runs or whatever, but when you have an issue or a problem, that's when you go to whatever that governing structure is. And so, so often you don't hear somebody show up and just say, hey, this is what I really liked. At that point, usually they're frustrated about something that's happened. And a lot of times not even directly related to your job, but something that happened along the way. And so you can kind of just see a lopsidedness of, oh, this individual had an issue and now they're coming to talk to me about it. So it is nice when you do hear somebody take the time to show up. And that's funny. I actually have been trying to apply that more, even the community I live in here in Illinois, because I'm like, they probably don't have people come to their public meetings and say, hey, I really like this, I like that. So I've been trying to do more of that, just to kind of be like, hey, I think you guys are doing a good job, because sometimes those compliments, they're out there, but we all live our daily lives, and how often are you going and expressing it? So
no, I would agree. I think the world would be a better place if we all just took 20 minutes of our day for gratitude and just told someone, like, I appreciate what you did.
I love that.
Admittedly, I don't know if I get 20 minutes of doing that in my own life, but it's at least a goal is to be able to say those kind of things. So
yeah, no, absolutely. Well,
here's my moment then. So thank you for allowing me to be on here. there.
You ruined it because at the end I was gonna thank you, but I'm gonna take my 20 minutes at the end here. So
Okay,
thank you
fair
for
enough.
wanting to be on the podcast. No, this has been delightful. And I said I know I've seen you for a long time. We've never really had much of a conversation, and just the way life has worked. But I've known of you. We know mutual people, and I worked in the same state as you as a while. So this is a delight for me as well to get myself know you a little bit better and what you're doing down there. And you're within reach of my 172, so maybe someday I will, if you allow me to grace your presence there, and I'll bring some popcorn and watch you through your glass, and I don't even have to interact with you. I can just sit in your parking lot and then pull out my
Come on down.
binoculars.
I'll take you to quintessential Evansville restaurants, and you can have the full experience.
That's great. Maybe I'll even leave a compliment. Who knows?
On me.
I love it. All right. Well, what you had suggested kind of on this podcast, which I love the idea, is some of our favorite aviation-oriented movies. Tell me if I got it wrong there, and whatever you want to throw in on that.
So that is 100% accurate. Yes, I can talk about EVV. I can talk about my career. I can do those things. We can have 7 podcasts on all these other topics.
We can.
But one of my side passions has been films over years. And so a random fact about me, which I love using, and there are certain people that know this, is in college I started a list, and every film I have ever seen is now on a list. It is obviously categorized by, is it a drama or comedy? But also, I have 2 different rating systems which I use.
Really?
One system is based off of, like, do you enjoy the film? Is it fun? Do you want to rewatch it? And every film gets a 0 to 10 rating based off of that.
0 to 10. Okay, so this is actually a pretty sophisticated system. I was thinking a thumbs up, thumbs down.
No.
Okay.
And then I have a 5-star rating.
5-star. So Michelin.
And so the reason I did this was, like 5-star movies or movies that go up to 5 stars.
Yeah.
Those are special movies. Like, should you see this movie?
Okay.
So every movie gets a 0 to 10. 100% every movie gets a 0 to 10.
Okay.
Of the almost 2,500 movies that are on my list right now.
Wow.
Only about 10%, probably less than that, have a star rating at all.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So, and the reason is, like, there are movies that I love, right? We all have those movies, but would I tell everyone that they need to watch that film?
Right.
Right? And so the examples I always give are movies like Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Everyone should see that movie. First full-length animated feature. It started Walt Disney, right? I mean, it is. If that movie was not successful, none of the Disney that we have now would exist. Everyone should see that movie. It is 5 stars. It is not a 10 out of 10. It is not one of my favorite movies that I want to rewatch, multiple times a year.
That seems now with the remake. Were you all over that then?
Like live action stuff?
Yeah, the one that just came out.
Not so much. I have not watched that one. I will say I now have 2 little ones. I don't get nearly as many films watch as I once did.
Well, Snow White sounds like that could be up their alley. You could probably watch that one with them.
We're on Cars. That's where we're at now.
That seems fair.
That's it.
That seems fair. If I was a kid, I might rather watch Cars over Snow White as well. But I would agree with the origins of Snow White and understanding the history and we all have it, right? I haven't watched it since I was a kid, but I know what you're talking about. I was like, oh yeah, I've seen that movie at some point in my life.
So there are those, and then just always a plug. I am a Star Wars guy, and so Star Wars is one of only a couple films that is both a 10 and 5 stars.
All of them, or
officially, I just say the first one, because if you don't watch Empire or Return or other stuff, well, it's a different conversation. Right. But if you don't watch those, like, I'm not saying those are 5-star movies. Right. But the first one is so iconic. It changed the landscape of technology in films and how films were marketed. It just changed so much about the industry. It is a 5-star film, and it's a 10. Like
Episode 4, right?
Yes.
Now, it's funny. I watched it more later in life as a teenager, Star Wars, and I really, I only like the first 3. Really, I guess there was another one I watched more recently. I know you're going to be like, "Oh my god, this guy doesn't know much about Star Wars," but there was one that I watched more recently that was, part of the prequel package. I thought that was done pretty well, and I apologize, the name's escaping me, but it had something to do with maybe Clone Wars or something like that. I know you're looking at me like, "Oh my god, how dare he?" But I do really like the first 3 movies. I do.
Yes.
The one with the bears is a little bit weird.
So I will take one moment and say, I love someone's perspective that I heard once, which is everyone thinks of them as Ewoks as being cuddly and sweet because they look super cute. But just as a reminder, when we meet them, they are about to eat our heroes.
That's right.
They are going to roast them on a spit and eat them.
Yeah.
So that individual describes them as murder bears and not Ewok. And that resonates. Right, if you look at it from that perspective, at the end of the film, they are celebrating, and they're using the heads of the stormtroopers as drums. Like
they are.
If they were going to eat our heroes, they definitely just ate those stormtroopers as the feast and celebration of beating the Empire. So if you take that perspective, it definitely changes. It's a little darker of a tip,
does.
But it definitely, it's not quite as cuddly as we want to think they are.
Well, and I think also too they've are at least sophisticated enough they were able to braid Princess Leia's hair, so I don't know how they got their paws in there.
Their itty bitty little fingers.
Right, little fingers there. But I do have a healthy respect for bears. I don't think too many of them are cuddly. Even I haven't seen too many bears in the wild, but I saw a couple in Washington State. And they're little, they're the baby bears, but Mama Bear was a little ways away. And I didn't even find that to be a cuddly scenario because I feel like Mama Bear would rip my face off in a moment's notice if the play called for it.
Very much. If you ever want to get more scared of bears, watch the documentary Grizzly Man.
I have seen it, and
That's a good way to get a strong, healthy fear of bears.
Yeah. And now I might be confused. That's a guy that lived in the wild with the bears, right? And then got eaten. Because I remember, I can't remember if it was something I was doing for this podcast, but there was a bush pilot who hadn't heard. You probably remember this part of it. He had a pre-scheduled, drop in to pick this guy up or give him supplies or something like that. And he said he landed, and did you remember this part? He felt like an ominous feeling, and the tent was ripped apart. The guy's girlfriend was gone, and he saw a rib cage from what ended up being this guy over off to the side, and the bear had buried them. And he said that when he took off, he could see the bear off in the distance that was emaciated that did this, and it's a crazy story.
Yeah,
but you know
very
what?
Sad.
It was very sad, but I remember though too. I remember this time frame. I remember watching him when he was alive on David Letterman. And I remember him talking to David Letterman about what he was doing. I remember thinking, like, what's this guy thinking? Like, you're going to sit in a tent with grizzly bears in the woods? And he had this whole thought that the bears were his friends and all this. I just remember at the time thinking, there's no way in heck that I'm sitting in a tent with grizzly bears around.
No.
Or Ewoks for that matter.
I will, yeah. Exactly. Gotta survive. It's all about survival.
How to survive. All right. So Star Wars. Now I'm going to be the first to admit I want to hear what you have to say about this because you sound like a movie aficionado. And out of Siskel and Ebert, I feel like you're both Siskel and Ebert. I'm just going to be off to the side listening here because if I say the movies that I've been thinking of, you're like, this guy doesn't know nothing about the cinema. He's an idiot. So I'd love to start with your list on what you kind of have been putting together for your. Let's see, 10-star or 10 rating and a 5-star.
So I think there's some like ground rules conversations too.
Perfect.
Right?
That's fair.
So one is like what makes it an aviation movie?
See, that's where I struggled.
So I had this conversation with other people, and one of the examples I will give you is Pearl Harbor. You remember late 90s, early 2000s?
I do. Very long movie.
Very long. The Pearl Harbor scene is awesome. It is beautifully done, not really accurate at all. From an aviation standpoint, not really accurate, but it was very coolly, like very neat done. The love story is horrible, and that part of the movie is just atrocious, in my opinion.
I agree.
And then the Doolittle Squadron stuff is great and is very interesting, but it serves the plot too much. And so, like, the point is Pearl Harbor, and the Doolittle thing was just because we're not going to end the movie with a bunch of Americans dying, which I can appreciate. We're going to have it end with this really nice, attack back in the Doolittle Squadron. But I would not describe that necessarily as an aviation movie. I would describe it as a movie about Pearl Harbor and a romance that is maybe not so much.
Yeah, you know what's funny is I really just thought of it as a love movie, like romance, more about that than anything, because Leonardo DiCaprio, right? He's the main. Forget.
No, Ben Affleck.
Ben Affleck? Well,
yes.
See how much I paid attention to this one. I saw it once. Is it over 3 hours?
It's got to be close.
Yeah, and so it's interesting. I lived in a dorm for like 6 months. I hated it when I went to school in Florida. It was the worst experience I've had in my college experience, and so I got the heck out of there. But the name of my hall was Doolittle. And I remember always thinking that. I was like, that's interesting. Are they setting me up for, like, failure? Like, no, just do little. And then I'm like, oh, the history behind it. But, yeah, I wish it was more of an accurate... I guess, if you go in with the mindset that you want to watch a love story, it's probably not a bad movie. If you go in with the mindset of historical facts, to your point, about Pearl Harbor and an action movie, I would say not so much. But that's not really on your list. That's just an example of what could... be considered a
and so
you're probably going to
I'm okay taking a broader perspective, but I think we also have to look at some things like that and be like, maybe it should not be included in the list.
See, I can understand that. Now here's where my mind has started to shift on as I was thinking about this episode, because I was thinking about movies that I actually enjoy, and like and there's a few in there like, oh, that's an easy aviation movie, okay. But then I started thinking, well, there's in Jeff Miller's mind, what if it's just flying? Like the DeLorean flies in Back to the Future, and I love Back to the Future, and technically they're flying around, especially, well, no, I guess not the first one, so it would have to be Back to the Future 2, but I know that's splitting way far hairs, but in my mind,
you might have stepped over the line on that one. You might have just...
Maybe I just tiptoed over it. He did put a flying hover conversion kit on it.
The moment that becomes a real thing, we'll add it to the list.
Yeah, okay. That seems fair. That's fair. All right. So we have some ground... Well, actually, so the ground rule is... what is the ground rule there? I mean...
I think that the aviation related should have to be integral to the storyline.
Wow. Okay. All right. That seems fair. You're going to hate my list. I don't even think I got to 10. I got to like 5.
Well, admittedly, I as much as I've told you that I have my list and all these kind of things, I did not come up with a hard list.
Okay.
I just thought it was appropriate that we should talk about, because everyone has a different opinion. I'm also that guy that, I will tell you again, Star Wars is a 10 and a 5-star, and I have people that will be like, you're going to be upset with me that I haven't seen it. And my response is, I'm not upset with you. Everybody has their own tastes.
Yeah.
That's fine. And that's why the star, I think, has value to my conversation. It is always, it's a meaningful movie, and it is something like that. Like, how many quotes from movies? Casablanca is one of the most beautiful movies ever written. I love it. I don't watch it all the time, but I think it's so well done. But it is quoted in so many other movies.
Yeah.
Like, watching that for the first time as an adult, and I'm like, oh man, I've heard that line before. I've heard that line before. So I think there are things like that even if you watch Casablanca and you don't like it because you don't think the story is romantic, or you can't handle the black and white, or whatever your issue is with it, you've now learned why these other 400 movies are using these lines, because they're quoting something that is historic to the film industry. So I don't judge, again, You can have anything. I may tell you it's a bad choice.
That's fair.
Or that movie is absolutely horrible. Or I just refuse to watch it. So all of those are options. But you are entitled to your own opinion, especially on anything of art and movies definitely fall in.
Well, I love that. It's interesting because I've found myself more recent in life, maybe over the last few years, that a lot of stuff either that I used to find interesting cinema-wise, I don't really, or it's just not, I'm like, eh. And so I find myself trying to, like, think of, people are like, oh, here's a new show, or here's a movie, and something that really captivates me. But it's interesting because I've been watching a lot of older movies, like, 1940s era, and more recently I've been thinking we've lived in this time where everything is oh, let's redo it. There's a new, I just saw I think Seth MacFarlane is redoing or not redoing, maybe it's just a continuation, I don't know, of Naked Gun, the movie with Leslie Nielsen, and the same with Spaceballs. They're coming out with a sequel. But anyways, I was like, oh, we're in this kind of reboot era of life. But watching movies from like the 1940s, to some of your points about Casablanca, I'm like, well, it just seems like people have just been regurgitating stuff forever. And the stuff that I thought was original in like the 80s and the 90s and the early 2000s, that was a lot of it based off of, previous movies that came out before my time. So it is interesting.
We're on what, version 3 or 4 of A Star Is Born? Right?
Yeah,
we think
right.
Lady Gaga and Bradley Cooper are great, and they are, and the movie is very good. But I went into it thinking, again, as a film person, I still went into it thinking it was going to be an original story. Not so much.
Not so much.
This is it's at least the 3rd version, if not the 4th version, right? How many versions of A Christmas Carol are there? Like every decade, you just get a new one. I have my favorite, which is Patrick Stewart from the 90s. But if you talk to my parents, they definitely will love an older black and white version. And now you have kids that are gonna like something very different, right?
Oh,
so
yeah.
I think they are updated. I think that is fine. I would generally agree. There's a problem in the industry of remaking and making sequels, but we'll talk about that when we talk about one specific movie. I'm sure you can guess what that one is. That is in my top. But even the sequel could probably be in my top. So,
all right. Well, let's hear your top. Let's we got the ground rules set up, right?
Yeah. So, I think a couple honorable mentions. I'm gonna give a couple of those. So, the first honorable mention is Pushing 10.
Okay.
So, Billy Bob Thornton, John Cusack. It's the only film I think I've ever seen about air traffic controllers.
Yeah. It's been a long time since I watched that movie. I completely forgot about it till you just mentioned it. It's been a long time.
I think it's honorable mention because it takes a very unique thing, and I think it now the characters are kind of crazy and there's all this weird stuff that happens, but just from the fact that it is an industry that is probably undersung and is integral to what we do on a daily basis, let's at least give them 30 seconds to say, hey, yeah, you can watch that movie. It gives you a different insight into the world of aviation.
John Cusack. Now, okay, I'm trying to remember. There was another movie that maybe it wasn't John Cusack, but there was. I'm trying to remember. You're film guys, so you'll probably know this, but it sounds like his name. He's the character that he was in 2.5 Men. He was the brother, not Charlie Sheen, but the other dude who's in a ton of 80 movies.
Yes. I know who you're talking about.
Okay, John. Yeah, whatever. Anyways,
Fire?
He's the air traffic controller, and he sneezes on his scope, and there's snot running down it, and he's like, "There's a huge blimp going south." I don't know. You're talking about your movie. I haven't seen the John Cusack one in a long time, but I just, as an honorable mention, I just wanted to mention that scene more than anything else.
That scene made the movie for you.
Yeah, it did.
And there are films like that. But the movie's like, it's not great, but that scene is so well written. And I've told my wife that we watched something, and she's like, "Was it good?" I'm like, "I don't know if the movie was good."
Right.
But that one scene was really well filmed, really well acted. Like there are moments in TV too, but in film in general, that you're like, oh man, they really hit that one out of the park.
They did. So Pushing 10, why just honorable mention for you? Why did it not make the cut?
I don't think it was a great film.
Okay.
And I just don't think it was not special, right? It's not a 7/8, rating. It's not a star at all. it gets a star in this setting because we're talking about aviation stuff.
So and let's say somebody out there said, I listen to this podcast, Nate's right, I'm going to remake that movie. Would you be an open participant to watch that movie if there was a remake?
I think so. But I would say there's a better story to be told about air traffic controllers than that.
Okay. That seems fair.
I don't know what it is. I am not a writer, right? I am an outsider that judges other people's art. I am not an artist myself.
That seems fair. Okay. Well, good to know. All right. So honorable mention, and then next.
Honorable mention there. I will also give an honorable mention to Airport.
See, Airport was on my list. You didn't like it as much.
So it's not that I didn't like it. It's just if we're going to say to like top 5, I'm not going to quite get there. I think the fact that I assume Airplane's going to show up on both of our lists because otherwise you said you like bad jokes. There's no worse jokes than half the jokes in that film. But admittedly, I had not seen Airport until recently.
Okay.
And so did not understand that Airplane was making fun of it.
Yeah.
So I admit that. But I will say, there were parts of it that you're like, well, one, this is outlandish as someone who works in airports. Some of these things are crazy.
Right.
Also, the lens through which, someone's going to take a bomb on a plane. Right. And in today's world, we're like, that's ridiculous. But in 1970, when it was written, yeah, you probably could have done that.
Yeah, it's funny because, like I said, both the movies. I think it's in the second one, but where they're making, because to me, it's one of those movies that was like kind of aha, because I had seen the Airplane and Airplane sequel way before I saw Airport, and so a lot of the jokes were lost on me from what they were making fun of in the movie. Obviously, because I saw all these movies before I was even in aviation. And so, when I saw it, I was like, oh, that's what they're doing. Or, I think it's Airplane 2, the sequel, where Sonny Bono has the bag the, flight attendant's trying to grab his bag, and he's like, no, and it's, filled with bombs or whatever. I'm like, okay.
That's the reference.
Yeah, that's the reference.
So I will say, the little old lady in Airport that is just stowing away on planes.
Yeah.
The rest of the story is actually pretty good. I really do like a large part of it. I like the fact they let the bomb go off and it wasn't a happy, oh, everyone's fine.
Right.
I like the fact that we find out, sorry, spoiler to people, the movie came out in 1970. So
right. You should have seen it by now.
Yes. You get 5 years with me, maybe 10, but
right.
Some of those before I was born, you missed your shot. So, but the Dean Martin's character in the first, he's having an affair. This is a pretty serious thing.
Yeah.
And the way his wife finds out at the end of the film, and it just kind of trails off. That was stuff that you did. I think you saw in that age of film where you didn't always have this happy ending. Right. The happy ending is that really no one really died.
Right.
Obviously the guy blew himself up, but overall it's a happy ending. You have the energy of something bad happened, but in all reality, bad things did happen, right?
Yeah.
People's marriages ended, and that's okay in that part of the story. And so you have those really serious things that are going on, people's life in danger, and that part is very serious. And then separate from that, you have this little old lady stowaway that is just, I don't know if she's supposed to be funny, but she's hilarious. Everything about her is cute and funny and well acted, and just so. I give an honorable mention mainly because it didn't quite make my top couple 4, 5, 6 list, but I thought it was impactful. And again, watching it 50 years later, and it kind of holds up. Not great, it's dated, but it holds up from a story standpoint.
It does. I think for me, and maybe our kind of generation of the era we grew up in, a lot of those actors in the movies I saw them in, like George Kennedy, in Airport, he was playing, more silly characters like the Naked Gun movies and stuff, which I always found his character funny. But for my parents and stuff, he was a serious actor. And so when you start dabbling into some of those movies where they're, playing that role, like him in Cool Hand Luke or something, it gives you so much more depth of their character. And then to me, it made, movies like Naked Gun funnier because it's this was for my parents and stuff, he was a serious actor, and he did these serious movies like Airport, and now he's kind of being silly later in life. And I don't know. I find it to be more of one of these movies that I've seen so many times, like Airplane, and then gives me a different perspective of maybe how my parents saw the movie versus what I do. Anyways, okay. Honorable mention on Airport was on my list, so we'll go with you. You're right on that one because you're way more of a movie buff than I am. So okay, is that it for the honorable mentions?
No, I have at least one more.
Okay.
Which is The Terminal with the great Tom Hanks.
Yes.
Again, I put that in there somewhat like Pushing Tin, in the fact that how many movies do you have of just people in an airport terminal?
Yeah.
Like it's unique. Yes, there's some really things that as aviation people are like, that's stupid, but it's based off of a true story.
Yeah, I remember that.
But I mean, and I don't know all the specifics, but the fact you based this crazy story off of something, and it has one of my favorite lines, that is one of those stupid, simple lines that no one cares about, which is, and I think Tom Hanks is one of the best, if not the greatest actor of a generation, maybe of all time. I respect him so much as an actor, but him doing the bad accent and trying to say that the man is cheating on his girlfriend or wife, or whatever it is, and saying he cheats is the funniest thing to me. I can watch him say that over and over again. The poor guy is just trying to tell her something that's so important that she needs to know because he cares for her, and it's so funny, and it's a sweet story. But overall, again, honorable mention. It's funny. If you like comedy in aviation, I think it's neat. Tom Hanks being Tom Hanks, he's very good in everything he does. Again, honorable mention, but is it making my top 5? It is not.
Yeah, I've seen it once, and I will admit that it didn't captivate me much through it. I wanted to probably be more, engrossed into it. I just remember, for me, it kind of morphed into one of those movies where I was doing laundry and coming back, or whatever it might be, and so I probably didn't give it as much of a fair shake as I should have. But I too am a big Tom Hanks fan. There's a lot of Tom Hanks movies that I thoroughly enjoy, and it's interesting. As a character, as an actor, I would have many more Tom Hanks movies before this one, but it doesn't mean that, especially if you're interested in aviation, because we see, I forget the last time this happened, but it was probably in the last few years, and I forget what airport. You might remember just the news articles we see where somebody was hanging out in an airport for like 3 or 4 months, and it was one of those larger complexes where it's not unheard of, right? When here at O'Hare, like if you go in for a morning flight, right, there's people that have came in on the last flight of the night and they're waiting for their morning connection, so it's not unheard of to see people sleeping around the terminals. But I'd say kudos to someone who can evade for that long, I guess. But I forget what airport it was, but it was like 3 or 4 months. They were living in the sterile area, just kind of bouncing back and forth, using the bathrooms, not creating a ruckus type of thing.
Fascinating.
It is. It was funny when I worked in San Jose, we actually had, so they put in a new ordinance because we had a lot of people that would just kind of live at the airport, especially in the landside areas, and the ordinance was you couldn't be on airport grounds unless you could produce a ticket for the next 24 hours. So you had to show like the police officer a ticket. We had one lady who bought like the Super Saver, most expensive ticket on Southwest that you could buy, that allowed her to have free ability to move the date and the time. So she just kept moving the date. But, the ingenuity on some people is never lost on me, that they can do
that woman is the old lady in airport.
Oh, yeah,
right?
She's
right. That person is the this generations of that. Right. I'm going to find a way to game the system to get my free flights or get my whatever it is. But, those people exist in all generations. This is just that iteration.
I love that.
Okay.
All right.
And then I think I will transition into like, I think these should probably be on my top list. So like I really only have four or five that are right, like where I'm saying my top. But I have a couple that I think just wanted to put them in there. The other honorable mentions were much more like for a reason, right? I mean, you should probably watch it because of these other things. Again, it's pushy tense, unique because of air traffic, terminal because it is in the terminal building. Like, so some of those unique things.
Yeah.
My two transitional ones are Up in the Air.
Okay.
So and again, that's bordering because I'm not sure that aviation is integral to that film, but I think the film was really, really good. And so if I did not add it to the list, as I looked through, admittedly, right, I went like everybody else went to Google and like, okay, how many of these have I seen? And turns out it's a lot, but it's not as many as they exist, right?
Right.
2,500 films sounds like a lot of movies until you realize how many are made every year for the last, however many decades. So,
there's some amazing movies you can find on, the streaming platforms now that never made it anywhere into the realm of normal society. And I do really love watching a crappy, just basically some people that were like, hey, we want to make a movie and put together. And one of the really cool things now is if you get on YouTube, people that don't like the way a sequel went or a story went, they've made their own movies on YouTube, and some of the production is really good. Like they've even gone like fans of movies. I'll say this, like I am somewhat of a horror geek, like especially around Halloween. I like the old horror movies and like Friday the 13th series. And there was a group of people that hated the way, basically, if anybody knows anything about Friday the 13th, there's been a ton of them now, but they got to a point, I think, around like the 6th one of them, and they created their own series of movies after that. Good quality production, free on YouTube, and they even hired some of the original characters from the actual movie. It's insane.
Wow.
Yeah, it's that, and then you get to see, like, I was watching the other night Grizzly that had what's his name, George Clooney in it, and just I think he's in Grizzly 2, and it's just this cheesy, horrible. We talked about the bears earlier on and the Ewoks. This movie is like they got big brown arms with claws on them that come off to the sides. It's the best. It's the best thing ever. I love that kind of. I'm gonna
have to look that one up. That is not on the list of movies that I have seen.
Yeah, well, you're gonna enjoy yourself. It's it's funny. And then there's other ones like these kids just, like they, they're like, oh, I don't like how Halloween ended, so they go and they make their own version of it, and they're literally just shooting it with like a GoPro. But if you're like, the artistic view from like teenagers to be like, I hated the way this movie was, so I'm gonna make my own version. And they get like, it looks like their dad's clothes and stuff, and they pin a badge to it or whatever. It's good stuff. It's good stuff.
And that's what leads to, great filmmaker, right? Steven Spielberg talks about that. What is his one of more recent films? It's not a biopic, but it's very similar to that, of talking about himself and The Fableman. And so like that sort of story, like that's where a lot of great artists come, right? Is kids, I don't like this, or I want to do something different, or I've never seen anyone do something like I'm going to do.
Right.
And again, as a George Lucas fan, as a Star Wars person, right? The success that he had was because he hated the film industry. Right. And now he is integrated into one of the most influential people in film history because he hated the industry so much, he was going to do his own thing and change the entire industry. Right. And that's beautiful of anyone. I mean, you can do the same thing with history of anything, right? If the Wright brothers were successful because they wanted to think outside the box, and yes, people had the idea that planes could exist, right? But they're the ones that did it.
Right, absolutely.
So,
and Orville wanted to impress his girlfriend with his flying contraption.
Don't we all?
Don't we all? It's a big motivator.
Okay, so Up in the Air, I again think it's a great film. Not sure it's technically aviation, but it's aviation themed, so I got that there. And then my last kind of honorable mention going into my top is The Aviator.
Oh,
So
okay.
that is Leonardo DiCaprio.
Yeah, that's okay. That's where I was thinking because he when he's playing Howard Hughes right at the end, and
Yes.
what does he get stuck on? Is it like it's the phrase he's saying? Oh, it's the future of the world. Well, he's saying something right. And he just gets stuck on it.
Yeah, and again, I think the fact it's a biopic and talks about that. I mean, I think the way that Howard Hughes looked at aviation is the future and the filming side of things, and just like I think it's well acted. Again, I think DiCaprio is very good in it, so I think from that standpoint, it's well acted. I think I'm going to double check to make sure I'm right, but I'm fairly confident I know who the director is.
Yeah, it's interesting. When I worked in Daytona Beach, Florida, there was, I think it was Convair. Anyways, it was Howard Hughes had owned it at one point, and by the time I got there, it was basically derelict. It was sitting in the infield, along with an old Trans Florida Airways 727. And there's like raccoons and stuff living in it. And I know that the airport was trying to see if a museum wanted it, and nobody did. So they ended up dismantling it. And I think somebody came in and took the yolks out of it to put in a museum for Howard Hughes. But it is. I actually did enjoy that. I really did enjoy that movie. It's probably not something I would revisit, but I did enjoy it.
Yes, and then so I double checked to make sure I was right. It is a Scorsese film, so you appreciate. Again, let's throw in the greatest directors of all time into this list. So let's get a little bit of that. But again, well acted, well directed. Not a movie I'm going to watch every day. Right? Doesn't have that sort of rewatchability.
Right.
But it was, I thought, a very good movie, good, interesting story from biopic, aviation side, all those things. And so I will say that takes care of my honorable mentions or things that I feel we should talk about. And then I got 5 for you.
I want to hear the 5. Let's hear it.
So I will start with Red Tails.
Red Tails. Okay. You know what? I don't actually think I've heard of it, but I don't think I've actually seen Red Tails.
So it took years to make. Again, I'm going to give a little George Lucas plug. He was loosely involved early on to make sure it happened and had a lot of desire to have it, see it be successful. I don't know what level he was involved in the end, quite honestly, if it was just as a producer or how that played out. But I thought it was a really neat story. I mean, the Tuskegee Airmen is a film that's very good. I just thought Red Tails felt like a new generation of aviation film when I watched it.
Yeah.
It was a little fast paced. Yes, it was all of the beautiful things that, again, previous films like Tuskegee Airmen put forth. Understanding from a historical perspective, were the fight scene, the aircraft fight scenes accurate to the time? Maybe not. But they were really well shot. And again, there's a lot of CG and that sort of stuff. And, I'd always wondered, does CG hold up for the time? But overall, I thought it was good. I thought it's definitely worth making the list. And I would say, hey, yeah, I mean, and if someone says, don't watch that, watch Tuskegee Airmen instead, okay.
You mean
but I think,
interchangeable?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think in a lot of ways, I think it was good. I think I enjoyed it. So that's going to round out my top 5.
So that's number 5.
I'm putting that at 5.
You're putting that at 5. All right.
Yeah, and I will say,
go ahead.
I'm going to save the opportunity that if you say, hey, what about this movie? I might be like, oh man, that should have been on the list. So if that does happen.
Well, it's funny because I do have a list of movies that I pulled up that before I got onto this with you, because obviously I have my own thoughts, which are horrible thoughts. But it's interesting with so many people in our industry get so frustrated over watching really any movie that has travel in it. Just the other night, I was watching, I think it was an old Seinfeld episode at a hotel, and they were flying from JFK to Akron, Ohio, and it was like a picture of a 747, flying over. And you're like, could they just hire someone like Nate just to read the script and be like, that's wrong. Okay, don't do that. Let's do this, type of thing.
And I appreciate shows. ER was really well known for that. Even like Big Bang Theory, right? Hired scientists to say, hey, when we say this crazy scientific thing, is it accurate? So I appreciate shows and films that do that level of accuracy. And then there's some that they're just grabbing B-roll. It's okay. we all have to just accept that that's what they've done.
Yes. Yeah.
The same plane that took off was not the same plane that landed. You used two sets of B-roll for different aircraft, and you and I might know the difference between the 737-200 and 737-800. Like, but the average person doesn't.
I absolutely agree with that, and I think the thing that we should, the large debate we could take away from potentially today, you see where your mindset sits on this is. Everybody always says Die Hard is a Christmas movie, and then people say, no, it's not. Well, then I would say in the same light, is Die Hard 2 an aviation movie?
My answer is yes.
I see, right?
The movie cannot exist if it's not at an airport.
Well, see, now, because that's my 5th on the list, so.
Okay, well, very good. I would argue I don't think it's the best of the Die Hard films. I personally, obviously, the first one, and I love the third one. I love With a Vengeance. I love those two. I think I've watched them all over the years. I think it's fine for you to put it on your list, but if you say it's better than the other Die Hard movies, the first three, the sequel, these like 4, 5, 45, how many they made since. Right. Maybe not those. Those are separate. But the original three, I will say, right. If you think it's the best of the three, we're going to have some words.
Seems fair.
But
that's logical.
If you say, hey, it's an aviation movie, it takes place. Yes, John McClane's wonderful. Who cares if the story is accurate?
Right.
It's entertaining.
Well, it was so funny because I remember when I was in Stockton, we were doing a training on jet fuel, and there was somebody who was absolutely serious about it. They're like, don't even strike a match around jet fuel. We've all seen Die Hard 2, and I remember the instructor put a cigarette butt out in jet fuel, and he's like, look, no, it takes a lot to warm up jet fuel at that point. Yeah. But, it's funny how cinema just sticks in our mind, right? Like, oh, that's the reality. That's the truth behind this. And so I'm going to say this up front. I feel like your list of movies is going to be like an ultra refined, very delicious, very expensive meal. Everything has a story. Everything is a good intake for you. Good cinematic value. Mine's going to be like junk food list. It's going to be like a pile of garbage. If you want to just have fun, like if people went to, I don't know if you remember back in the old days, you go with your parents and stuff to like, your family video or Blockbuster or whatever, and they'd have like, Nate's picks on the wall, and you'd have like all this cinematic pleasure. Like here's your beginning, your entree to your salad, and mine would be Jeff's picks, and it'd just be a wall of garbage.
But it's entertainment. Again, I'm not judging someone's art. I will just poke you with a stick when you say something crazy.
Seems fair. All right. So number 5, but interchangeable, Red Tails or Tuskegee Airmen, correct?
For 4, I'm gonna say Sully.
Really? Okay. Interesting. Okay.
So admittedly, I pulled up a list, and they're right there. I've not seen every aviation film. But I pulled up a list when we first started our conversation, said, okay, what are the movies that I should have seen that are famously good aviation films that I have not seen? And Sully was on that list. I had not watched it previously, but I then watched it. I think it's one, no surprise, Clint Eastwood directed it. Clint Eastwood as an actor is very good. As a director is so much better. If in the history of cinema, people are always going to think of Westerns and Clint Eastwood, and they probably should for many good reasons. But the films that he has directed are all excellent. I just think he has a greater talent there than he did as an actor.
What about as a mayor?
What?
What about as a mayor? He was mayor.
Oh, I did not know that.
He was mayor of Carmel, California. So when I worked at San Jose, obviously this is before my time, this is in the 80s, he would come in, be shooting movies and stuff down in LA, land, and he would go off to his, city meeting, and everybody said he was always so nice and friendly. But he was mayor of Carmel, California. Not to be confused, because you guys have a Carmel, Indiana, which is very fancy northern suburb of Indianapolis. And I said to somebody once, like Clint Eastwood when mayor of Carmel, you guys are Carmel, Indiana. Like, no, it's Carmel.
Yeah.
So if you're in,
welcome to the Midwest.
Yeah, right. don't try to church it up here, Jeff. It's Carmel.
But anyway, so kudos. I mean, very, very well directed. The way it's filmed in pieces, I think, was excellent. I mean, I'll say that as someone again who watches a lot of film, who enjoys storytelling, that film could have been told in a very linear approach.
Right.
And the fact that they didn't, I will argue, is definitely the right decision. It made the film better. You get the stress that Kevin Silverberg was going through, right? The fact that like you did something no one has ever done. Everyone survives. This is a beautiful story, and you still feel like you're being attacked and pressured from all angles.
Wow, yeah.
And I love that aspect of it, that he felt the pressure in a similar way, but in a Hollywood fantastical version. If you've ever seen Flight, with Denzel Washington, and that one I think had similar feel of like, you did something crazy. But the fact that the one is a true story and one is not, there's a reason why one is the top 5 and the other one is not.
That seems fair. It's interesting because with Sully, I did like the movie. I did. Another Tom Hanks aviation movie, right? So
he's everywhere.
And so the interesting thing about that, so Terminal is honorable mention, Tom Hanks, Sully in the movie. I had a friend who worked for the NTSB during that time that the actual accident had happened. And they thought that it was the portrayal of the NTSB was very unfair in Sully. And that he said that's not how it was at all. And we were very, we were very fair about what we were doing. And so it was an interesting perspective. I won't name names, but from someone on the inside who said, and this is, again, a soundbite, who knows, but they said they watched it and they're like, they thought it was unfair the way the NTSB was portrayed.
And I can see that. The line that I appreciated was when someone else was, one of the other pilot was complaining about the way they were being treated. Sully's response was, they're just trying to do their job. Right. But that did cause him, significant mental stress of, what if they are right?
Right.
I mean, and I think anyone who survives, survivor's remorse, except he also saved everybody, right? So he's in that weird, you're a celebrity, but you have the what if. What if I could have done something that would have, not put them in danger, right? The outcome, because how many other pilots in that exact same situation, that outcome's not the same.
Right.
He was the right person, the right place, at the right time, with the right weather. Yes, all the bad stuff that happened was all the bad stuff.
Right.
But because he was the right person, so I think it's a great story. I love the fact it's a true story. Yes, it is still Hollywood, and things are always going to be a little more condensed in a time frame. Right. I mean, it seems like the NTSB report takes 3 days.
Right.
But that's probably not right. You and I both know that. So, I mean, yes, there are those type of things, and yes, you have to make it a little more adversarial. Because if it was just a cooperative story, it's not as fun.
Yeah, the only person that was in the wrong place in that movie was the geese. Other than that, but then we wouldn't have a movie, I guess, to talk about it with.
Right.
No, it's funny when you talk about cinema and on the small screen. I remember, growing up and watching the original Law and Order, and then getting into real life and hey, wait a minute. So someone doesn't get indicted, convicted, and sent to prison within 5 hours of I think even Tuesday to Wednesday. But yeah, like you said, but you have to. I mean, if you're going to make a movie about something, you're going to have to, people aren't just going to want to watch something completely boring. You save that for Jeff's podcast, except for, when I have great guests like you on. Very engaging. All right. So that's where you're sitting on number 4 is Sully.
It is.
Okay. All right.
Where are you at?
I don't even know if okay. So So here's the thing, and now this is where people that are listening to this are going to be like, God, Jeff is such garbage, but here's my thing with it is, I looked at my list as movies that I would really want to watch again, and I'm going to love to hear your reaction on this, because you're going to enjoy it. So there's two things. There's Hot Shots, which... you, you could just your reaction says it all. And then here's, I guess, maybe an honorable mention, but where I would probably stick to at number 4, and you're gonna love this, is the original Final Destination movie. Now, I'm going to be really curious to see what you have to say about that statement.
So I'll say Hot Shots almost made the list as an honorable mention.
Okay.
As an outlandish comedy. And the only reason it didn't is because I have you know what one of the next couple movies for me is going to be Airplane.
Yes.
I think it's going to be on your list too. And I don't think Hot Shots is as good as Airplane.
Yeah, absolutely. And
so solely based off of that,
yes.
It didn't even get an honorable mention because there's a better version of a slapstick comedy out there. So that's why. Other than that, it's funny. It's, and especially it was before, it was when they were doing that type of good slapstick mockery, and then they went through like the late 90s, early 2000s, where we're going to make fun of everything. So there's Meet the Spartans and the Not Another Teen Movie, or I don't know, 45 different versions of that. It's going to make fun of everything. Those all just felt cheap.
Yeah, right.
Like comparatively to the quality of the Airplane and even Hot Shots, or you mentioned Leslie Nielsen, right, and the Naked Gun films, right? Those are serious versions of something that's mocking things in a serious way.
Right.
Spaceballs. Like, I love Space. Like, so many Mel Brooks comedies are that way.
Yeah.
Young Frankenstein is played as a serious movie.
Right.
It's just hilarious.
Right.
It's played as serious, right? It wasn't like some of those others. They're too referential, too just And so I think Hot Shots is kind of that last of that generation that I think did a good job of mocking things, but it's not as good as Airplane, so not making my list. So there's my opinion there. Final Destination. So you said you love horror films. I do not.
You don't. You're out. Okay.
I do not watch practically any horror films.
Really?
The number of people I've never seen Jason or Freddy or Mike Myers. none of those.
Really?
I am just out. Slasher films, I'm 100% out. I will not watch. I don't like jump scares. I don't get anything value out of them. I have said I feel I should watch the first of all of them just because as a movie person, they spawned something great, right? They spawned millions of dollars being spent. Right. So I should watch them all on the original.
Well,
I have not.
I'll say this about Final Destination is, so the original one, it's the plot basically kind of follows the...
And I have seen the original.
Oh, you have? Okay.
I've not seen any of the sequels.
Okay.
So again, it's not a slasher. So if you get like those type of, like, I'm more inclined to watch. Slasher, I'm 100% out. I'm just no desire.
Yeah, see,
you get into movies like the first Saw, like it's hyper violent, but it's a really neat story. Final Destination, I've seen the first one. I know how that goes. I don't need to watch anymore.
Well, yeah, and I think that's a fair statement to make. You know, it's interesting because actually this was a review from Siskel and Ebert back when that movie originally came out. I remember the movie came out, and you know, Siskel and Ebert would always trash any horror film because most of the time they don't get great reviews. This movie actually they gave a good review to because it was a different twist on something that hadn't been done, right? And it's death following this accident, which I have always kind of found the aircraft accident in the first Final Destination probably follows at least loosely what happened to TWA Flight 800 when it exploded off of takeoff, because when you look at a lot of the background in the movie, they're following the accident investigation, JFK, over the ocean, explosion, and you know a line within the fuel tank, you know, sparked and caused this explosion. Anyways, so it was all this thing about death's design, death's plan. Now, the aviation stuff always has me extremely interested, so I think that's why this movie in particular, because beyond that I agree with you and whatever the rest of them, but if it's something that's just like a milk dud or something where you're like, yeah, I could eat a milk dud and sit on the couch, I could go back and watch this movie again. So when I started thinking about my list, there's some really good movies out there, right? Like, you know, we talked about Casablanca, Tor, all these really classic movies. But if I was being honest, and I always try to be honest on this podcast, if I'm talking like something that's like comfort food and something that I'll just sit down and be like, yeah, I'll watch that will have me interested, at least enough to sit there and you know, maybe do some stuff to the side, that would be one of those movies. Both those actually would be. If they're both on, I could watch it, enjoy it, and there's some aviation theme to it. So that's at least how I'll try to argue it.
Fair enough. I will not. You heard my arguments against both of those.
That's fair.
But in general, like, I'm fine with those being on your list. I don't think they are ridiculous movies. They each have their unique thing. And I would argue that I would argue two things. One, Final Destination, maybe not completely an aviation movie. It's just kind of that beginning part. But I will also argue, as I gave credit to films in aviation that were not your classic aviation stuff,
right.
I think Final Destination fits into that.
Yeah.
Like, there's only, if you've seen Flight Plan, or if you've seen like Red Eye, there are a couple other that are more that kind of, I wouldn't say horror, but suspense type films that have some aviation to them. I would argue watch Flight Plan before I'd watch Final Destination. For those people that are listening to the podcast, I think it's a better film. But
absolutely. Well, and I'll say this too, because I actually had somebody reach out to me more recently about, fear of flying and they're afraid of flying. And, obviously you and I know all the statistics. And, basically what's it? Statistics don't lie. I was like, so if you have a good point there. If you're a nervous flyer, just remove Final Destination. Go watch Hot Shots. That's a better movie for you.
Yes, very much so.
All right. Moving on to number 3.
Number 3, Memphis Belle.
Memphis Belle. Okay, so I know the plane, but I don't know.
It's old enough. I mean, I couldn't tell you the year off the top of my head, but it's an older film. It's a very great World War II story. You're emotionally connected to the characters, and the reason I say that is I watched it as a teenager, probably.
Okay.
And teenagers don't typically like older films. Just the nature. You don't have that same respect and stuff. But I remember watching it. I remember being emotional during it. I remember being sucked into the story, like all of those things. And I probably have not watched it in 20 years. So I'll admit to that. But I remember that feeling. And as I looked at aviation films, as soon as I saw that one on the list of like potentials for my list, I'm like, man, that was really good.
Yeah.
Like, I have that memory. And there's certain scenes that still today, 30 years after I watched it for the first time, I can still picture in my head. I think it's a great story. There's a whole lot of conversation of, is it historically accurate and those kind of things. There's always that with any of these type of films that are based around a historical event. But I just think it's such a good film. Again, I think I got emotionally connected to the characters. And in film, is that not our goal? Like, I would argue that in most film, especially dramas, the goal is to connect with the characters. And heck, even your Final Destination, right? If we didn't like the characters and we were just like, I just want them all to die anyway, you're probably not going to be as, nervous or have that same level of anxiety. So the goal should be to be connected with the characters. I think Memphis Belle does an excellent job with that. Again, not that I've seen it recently, but I just think it should be on the list. And, a little bit of kudos. It's an older film.
No, I love that. So it's interesting. We went recently to the Dayton Air and Space Museum that I think it's the United States Air Force manages there. It's a really cool museum. But there was, I want to say it's not the original, because we were trying to find the original B-17 from the Memphis Belle. And I think they have a reproduction one there that they used in the movie, I think. But if have you seen the B-17 in real? I think the real one's in D.C., if I remember right. Maybe it's Smithsonian.
Don't think I have. I've not been out to, I've been to one on the mall. I've not been out to...
Okay. Yeah. Well, that's good. No, that's again, another historical movie. Like I said, a nice refined palette that you have, which is going to make mine look like crap. Because again, mine is Milk Duds and Snow Caps at the movie.
Everybody needs a few Sour Patch Kids now and then.
Yeah, right. Now, okay, so here's the thing. I have a third, but there's something that I was struggling with again, like on the fourth. Because there's another movie that I really like, and it has the name of an aircraft in the title. The movie itself is not aviation-oriented or theme. It's more about travel. But it is a favorite movie of mine, and I'm not saying that I'm putting it at third, but I at least want to mention it, because I want to get your take on it. And that movie would be Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. Now, I guess... I'm going to push the limits here of what you say. But here's the thing. Planes is in the title. And, there's such iconic scenes in there, about them going to Wichita and him trying to get home. And, the aviation part is a small component of it. But the whole movie is only based off of the fact that he couldn't get on the plane and get home. And that he got bumped off. And now he's rolling in a car with someone who's selling shower curtain rings. And I'm going to stop to let you tell me why it's not.
So, I have a confession to make.
Okay.
Which I have never seen Planes, Trains, and Automobiles.
You haven't?
It's been on my list of, like, I love the actors in it. There's no reason for me to have never seen it.
Okay, yeah, that's fair.
I just have not. And it's, again, anytime someone learns that I've got my movie list, they all love to be like, name a movie, and they're like, you haven't seen that? And so this is one of those. And if I went through the list, I bet there's 24 of those. In fact, there's a movie that is supposed to be very good. It's an aviation-themed movie. I was hoping you would put it on your list, but I have not seen it, but it's supposed to be good. When we get to the end, I can mention that. Okay. But I've never seen it, so I couldn't add it to my list, and I didn't have time to watch it before our podcast. So,
yeah, that seems fair.
I'm fine with it being on the. If you want to put it on, again, it's your list. I know enough about that it's funny. The question I would have for myself is, does that hold up to me? Right, having not watched it and now watching it while I'm in my 40s, does it still hold up? Because some movies of that era do, and I'm like, still super funny. And others have become a little more cringeworthy, or a little like there's those type of things.
Well,
and so that is always my question when you have not watched a film. I don't know your age exactly, but I assume you're of the age of which Ace Ventura and Dumb and Dumber were a thing.
Absolutely, yeah. So
if you show kids that today, I don't think they have the same opinion. And if you've seen it showing it to an adult who's never watched it, I don't think they have the same opinion. But I would guess, with what you have said about your humor, you and I would both agree those are hilarious films.
Yes. Okay. So my grandfather, I remember the package specifically. He lived in Florida. We lived in Michigan. He sent us a care package. It had Hostess coffee cakes in it, a copy of Dumb and Dumber, a copy of The Mask, VHS copies, a copy of The Mask, a copy of Ace Ventura 1 original, and then Ace Ventura When Nature Calls. And that was it. I was like, this is my, I got my movies. I'm going to set them up. Watch them. And but it's funny because to your point, I mean, I try to go back to it like now, like if you don't have the memories probably of the time, but like my dad and stuff, he's passed on now, but watching some of these movies, right, it kind of takes you back to that snapshot and that moment in time and maybe where your own sense of humor and stuff was. And I can understand watching some, it's kind of different now because everybody's like 30-second reels on TikTok or whatever. So maybe people that are younger now don't have the same thought, but whatever they're doing now, whatever their media outlet is, those things are the memories that I have. And I hope that, it sounds like with your kids that, you guys have an opportunity to sit down and watch movies, because that to me is some of the memory here, is not so much the movie and how good it was, or maybe it doesn't hold up to these days, but it's the memory of like being with your dad or just like your kids and you, right? Like it's a moment that you can take, and again, it's somewhat of that comfort food. And I would say for like Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, if you've seen any John Candy movies, now this is a John Hughes movie, which I don't know if you're a John Hughes fan or not. There's a lot of movies based around Chicago that he did through the 80s and the 90s, and back to your point about what doesn't hold up to today's standards, but if you watch it in the snapshot of the time it was filmed. But this movie in particular, John Candy was one of those comedic actors, right? He wasn't like a Chris Farley, and I love Chris Farley, but I'm just, he had a different style about him, like in Home Alone and stuff, where people, the point you made earlier, that people have a connection. And that Planes, Trains, and Automobiles is really about that. Since you haven't watched it, I won't spoil it for you, but it's really, there's a lot of funny stuff in it, but there's also this kind of human connection through the film all the way to the end. So it's not just slapstick, Naked Gun type comedy. It's kind of reality of life and people being middle-aged and, losing loved ones and all that stuff. So it is a really good movie.
And I think John Candy is great. I think Steve Martin and I think he's a well-respected actor, and I think he's still one of the most underrated comedic actors that exists. Yeah. And I saw a really good interview where they were talking to, I can't remember, I think it was another actor that was acting with him. And they said they would do a scene, and it'd be kind of funny. And Steve would look at the director and be like, a little more, right? And they're like, sure. He said with precision, he could do a scene again and just turn the funny up one level. And then he'd do it again, like, no, I need to go up a little more. And then he'd get to like, no, that was too far. I need to draw my comedy back. And he said, from an acting standpoint, they'd never seen anything like it, to be able to watch someone and like, I do this move and it's funny. But if I do this move, it's real, right? It's just that slight difference. And they said no one can do it like Steve Martin's been able to. And again, I think John Candy's lines are just priceless. Again, Mel Brooks, Baseballs, again, Star Wars guy. The number of lines John Candy delivers in that are one-liners.
Oh, yeah.
From, I'm half man, half dog. I'm my own best friend. It's a well-written line, right, and delivered great. But his trying to get out of his seat and forgetting the seatbelts on, that was an accident, and he says, ooh, that's going to leave a mark, is one I've quoted 1,000 times in my life. And is perfectly done in the moment, and John Candy's great. So, I fully expect myself to watch it at some point and be like, yes, that movie was everything that Jeff said it was going to be. So, no, you want that on your list, I'm completely fine with that.
Perfect. I mean, so was that, between that and Airplane 2. Now, again, Airplane 2's, it's flying, but it's more space. But, there's a part, William Shatner, and it tried to come in as more like maybe the Robert Stack character in Airplane. As far as sequels go, I'm not saying that it's obviously Airplane it rings to that, but there's something about it as a sequel that I very much enjoy. Sonny Bono being it, we talked about that earlier on. That is, they've turned to Jello, that type of stuff. So, between those two at a third level, that's kind of where I would put it. But one is technically space travel, and the other one isn't a ton of aviation theme besides with planes, trains, and automobiles. I think for the traveling public, something we can all experience, obviously in a hijinks, high-level way, but getting a flight canceled or getting delayed and trying to figure out how to make your way home. I think both have some traits into it that you can at least pull to say there's some aviation in here.
Fair enough.
All right, moving on to two.
Finally, we are here for me and for you. Airplane.
Okay. You know what? I'll say this. Number 2 is not Airplane for me, but
I assumed it was going to be a very top for you.
Yeah.
I have a reason why I don't have it as number 1. We'll get to that when we get to number 1. Here's the thing. It is everything that it should be. It is of its time, has a little bit of like, ooh, watching it now. You probably shouldn't say that, but still very funny.
Well,
right?
And I think that's the thing, right? Like we were talking about Mel Brooks movies and like Blazing Saddles, right? I think that when you watch, a movie like that, you could, but the reality is, for me growing up young, right? And, you can bridge kind of the gap of understanding what other, people go through in life and, trying to level it out with comedy. And I think if you watch it through that lens of like, back, like I love watching old, like Eddie Murphy, Richard Pryor, that type of comedy back in the day where everybody, is there's this kind of like level set of, hey, listen, we all do silly things. Let's laugh about it. And it builds that connection. And I think looking at, movies, like that, like the same here, where there's some stuff where you're like, oh, that probably wouldn't be made exactly as it is today. But, watching the genre, and especially in the time within your living, right? You can look at something and say, yeah, maybe that pushed the limit on something. But this movie itself is so iconic. I guess I'll talk about it now because it is my number 1. And there's no sense in letting you talk about it and then talk about something else and come back to it. So I'll just say it is my number 1, and obviously I think it's anybody who knows me will be like, yeah, that sounds about right. But it is, it's one of those feel-good movies that, for me, in aviation, like, it's like, oh, this is back to watching it with my dad, and it was one of his favorite movies. And it is. There's so much that is quotable to some of the examples you've made about other movies that it has to be number one for me. But I would love to hear why it's not number one for you.
Mainly because I think number one for me is very obvious. Are we going to that? Do you want to come back?
Well, I'll tell you this, because you know want me to talk about who my number two is?
Yes.
My number two is Top Gun.
Okay, that's my number one.
Okay, all right.
No, and so my reasoning is slapstick, crazy, stupid comedy that Airplane is not everybody's cup of tea.
That's true. That's true.
Right? I mean, some people can't handle it. Some people would say it's dated. So you could say all of those things about Airplane, and they would all be fair assessments of the film. I just happen to think it's hilarious. I happen to think, just like you do, there's so many quotes, right? Literally, this past weekend, someone said, surely you must be serious.
Yeah.
Like it's so good from that perspective. I think Top Gun is a simple, everyone loves action. Action is a much easier genre to pass through generations. I think from an action standpoint, I think if you and I both think about it just briefly, we both think there's these great aviation fight scenes. There's not.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you actually watch it, there's not. There's not a lot going on in the planes.
That's true.
A lot of in the cockpit and then a couple little things. It's not a lot actually in the planes during these like high pivotal moments. There's just a couple scenes. But we have created, even in our own imagination, that those fight scenes are extravagant and just super complex. And they're not, but they are great.
They were. I think at my heart of hearts, there's times where if I'm truly looking at like a favorite movie, like if I'm like I've had a stressful day, I just want to unwind, it's going to be a comedy. Usually that's like where I'm going to go. With Top Gun, it spurs so much, right, of this love for aviation, and it's hard to not recognize that in the sense of what it's really done probably to create aviators from the 80s to now. It's interesting because as a movie, it's got a lot less of what we talked about with Pearl Harbor. There's a love story in it, but it doesn't dominate the film. And you, to the points you made earlier about having care for the characters, like when Goose dies, right? Like I felt that, like I felt like, and it's interesting because I've heard people over the years. So it started the first airport I worked at. There was someone there who used to work for Morton Salt at the time, and so he was just doing it more as like a side job. He was doing 139 inspections and stuff like that. Anyways, his whole thing was they didn't have to kill Goose. They could have. The movie would have been just as good without Goose dying, and I don't really feel that way. I feel like he probably had to die. It's my thought.
Yes, 100%. But I think that goes back to my conversation about Airport. It doesn't, like, the best movies are not just happy from beginning to end.
Right.
Right? I mean, even at the end, and yes, Maverick comes in and saves the day and does all the crazy things. But it still ends with him losing he has lost his best friend.
Right.
Right? When he shows up to Top Gun for graduation, he is still lonely and depressed. And our main character, through a third of the movie, is struggling with a level of guilt, a level like all these things. And that is not something you see in action films practically ever.
And he's also not Top Gun.
Yes.
He doesn't actually
It's Rocky, right? Rocky doesn't win. Right. That's what makes the first Rocky so good.
Right.
Then you're like, we're going to make sequels. He's going to win this one. Okay, fine. Right? The first Rambo, compared to all the Rambo sequels, the first Rambo has a special story it's trying to tell you.
Right.
It's not just an action movie. And so, again, I think those type of things. He is not Top Gun. He saves the day, but he still lost. And he learned from this horrible thing. Right. I mean, I think all those things. And yes, it spurred number of kids named Maverick out there exponentially increased after that film. Right. The naval aviators and the Air Force their recruitment I cannot believe it was ever as good as it was after that film came out.
Yeah.
That spurred a generation of pilots that may have never ever flown a fighter, but just I want to be that. I want to be in aviation, and then they eventually end up, heck, maybe even like us.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
But just for the industry, for all of those things, and then we'll give just 5 seconds of a shirtless volleyball scene gets everyone excited.
Have you ever seen, is it Quentin Tarantino, his take on that scene in Top Gun?
I have not, but I'll have to go find it.
Yes, go watch Quentin Tarantino's take on Top Gun, because his take on it really is, it's a romance movie, but between all the guys in Top Gun. And so Quentin Tarantino, go and watch it, and then we'll talk about it at some point down the road.
Fair enough. I will go find that.
But
I appreciate the fact that as they made the sequel, which I thought was going to be horrible, it's not bad. It was an enjoyable film.
Yes.
It's still formulaic. It still doesn't have quite the same level. Again, it failed where the first one succeeded.
Right.
In some ways. Right.
Right.
In the goose death, some of those high stakes, bad things happen. You lost some of that in the sequel. No real surprise.
Yeah, I think
you do that in sequels. You don't do that in the original film that's that successful.
Yeah, I feel like for me, obviously something as iconic as Top Gun and why it probably took so long, right? You have to kind of tiptoe. The sequel's not going to be as good as the first. So if you go in knowing, all right, this is going to just be somewhat of a fiesta for me to see where Maverick has gone, because you could sit there and say, okay, Maverick, doesn't have money to buy people drinks at the bar, but he also has a hangar of the P-51 in it, and you and I can understand probably the financial implications of that better than most. But okay, so you just go in kind of like, all right, let's look. But it's interesting to me because just in real world events, because I was watching Bill Maher and he was talking about how the sequel has been a little more washed down, and it's referenced as the enemy rather than a particular country or group or anything like that in the movie. But the similarities of the plot versus enriching uranium in Iran, how similar it really looks to that. And so I actually heard people be like, well, do we send in the bombers, or we send in Maverick in the plane? And so it's interesting how in real life the storyline kind of aligned with what they were really trying to do there in the movie. But as far as Top Gun, I won, yes, it's number 2 for me just because I like a comedy. But I have been reading, so Dan Pedersen, he created Top Gun, and he wrote a book about it, and I actually got it at an aviation conference, so I've been reading it. I've talked about it on some other episodes, but he really goes into great detail the start of Top Gun versus the cinematic version. He doesn't talk about the cinematic too much beyond what we've already said, like, okay, that's not really real life. But there's some really cool stuff that happened in real life that he talks about in there, like Area 51. They actually had a captured MiG there. And so when they were starting the Top Gun school, they would go over to Nevada and they would dogfight with the real MiG to learn the characteristics of it. So I would recommend, if you like the movie, you enjoy the movie. The sequel I kind of took as a maybe a Snickers bar. It's not the best for me, but it will be enjoyable on some level if you like the character development through the first one. But the book Top Gun, I've really been enjoying, about kind of the real history behind how they started the flight school and where it's at now and all that stuff.
Wonderful. I'll add that to the to listen list.
Yes, please do. Okay, so that's your top list. So we're kind of close. Besides my honorable mentions.
Well, I think it goes back to what we originally said. Like, I am someone who believes that art is what it is, and then you whether enjoy it or you don't. And it doesn't mean it's good or bad, right? You may think Monet looks horrible, and I may think it's the most beautiful thing in the world. The same thing can be said of anything, right? Yeah. So it's what makes the industry move, right? It's all those things. And so I appreciate that you came with a different perspective, but I will also note our 1s and 2s are still the same.
That is true.
Right?
That is true.
That great, and I mean this, that great cinema is great across the board.
Right.
It is not opinion, right? The Mona Lisa is still beautiful. The Last Supper is still gorgeous. The Sistine Chapel is one of the most beautiful things ever created. And we can agree that great comedy in aviation, it starts and stops with Airplane. And yes, we can talk Hot Shots and a few others, but it starts at Airplane. And we could also agree that the entire aviation world is different because Top Gun was successful, and you can watch it 1,000 times for all the good and, maybe missing things in it.
I think you wrapped it up so beautifully there. I can't really do much justice beyond that. I did want to mention, make sure early on, you said that there was a movie that you wanted to see was on my list. Did we hit that? Did we talk about what you wanted to talk about there?
We did not. So that movie is The Right Stuff.
Oh, The Right Stuff. Okay. Yeah, okay.
So I have never seen it.
Okay.
It shows up on a lot of other lists, is very good. I've never seen it. And so it was on the list of things I was going to try to watch before our podcast. And then I'll be honest, the other one, just because it was you, I was wondering if Snakes on a Plane would show up. I've also not seen that one, but that one's become by design rather than Right Stuff. I just haven't had time to watch. So,
yeah, you know what? I'm looking at The Right Stuff right now because I have not got a chance to, I guess, see. I was wondering if I had seen it, but 3 hours and 13 minutes. Okay, that's a haul, but looks like worth it. Snakes on a Plane. I've watched it. Fantastic. I also love the Minions scene. Was it Minions 4 or whatever it is, or 3 when they're in the plane? There's these little moments and nuggets that I enjoy. And planes, too. I don't know if your kids watch. I know you said they're into cars, but the movie Planes, right?
Yes. I will say, and Planes is cute.
Yeah.
When you go to like Planes, Fire and Rescue and some of the other like spin-off, not quite as good. The first Plane's cute. But it pales in comparison to the Cars movies, in my opinion. I think it's cute, but in general, it's
that
fine.
seems fair. That seems fair. Well, that's at the end of the day, like I said, it's something that I think it's personable to people, but it's also something that allows us to have a connection. And I mean, your knowledge of movies is great. You're at what, 2,200? Is that what you're at?
I'm at 2,490 as of last night. I had to check to make sure, and I've been slowly working through the American Film Institute's list. I have one left to watch on their top 100. So
now, are you a actual movie theater guy? Do you miss the movie theater? Do you go to the movie theater? Or are you at home with the family? I'd rather be at home and do my own thing. Or do you take time? Like if there's something you really want to experience in IMAX or something like that, do you take the time to go do that, or do you prefer it at home?
I definitely would prefer to go to the theater. My one weird exception to that, and it's contrary to my general beliefs, is comedies.
Yeah.
Because I have a friend I grew up with who's a wonderful person and has the loudest laugh possible. And so going to a comedy, I miss the second and third jokes because he's laughing too loud. I want to laugh on my own. And I don't think it needs the big screen.
That seems fair.
I don't like a comedy on a small screen or big screen doesn't make a difference.
Yeah.
A joke is funny, whether the guy's 12 inches tall or 12 feet tall doesn't make. I think big expansive films are best in the theater. I don't want anyone to have their cell phone out. I am very particular. Don't talk to me during the film.
Sure.
I don't want to have a conversation. I want to be immersed in the experience. I want the surround sound, Dolby Digital. I want that full experience. I want to be engrossed and be taken away for 2 hours of my life into this world. And so I think that's best done in the movie theater. But I also have 2 little kids. Making the movie theater as much as I would like to. And so I've also come to terms with I'm going to have to watch some films, and it's going to take me 2 or 3 nights.
Right.
And so again, it's how you can process it. You have to deal with what you got to deal with.
It seems fair. I remember being a kid going to the movie theater, and the seats sucked, but it was cool. You went to the movie and you got popcorn. It was a fun thing. And then now you go to the movies, and you get recliners, and there's certain places they'll bring you food. So that's a lot of fun. But I remember, it's funny to your story, early on I was dating someone when I lived in Florida, and Benjamin Button had just come out, and I did the faux pas that you just said you don't want, and I tried talking to her through part of the movie. It was a no-go. And I learned at that point not to continue on with that. And one of the things that I plan on doing at the end of the month here, which I think Star Wars would be I would love to do it with Star Wars. But at the end of the month, another movie I really want to, this is happening in Chicago, so I'm going to go to it, is the Symphony. They will play the scores from the movie live while the movie's being, projected. Yes. And they're doing that with Back to the Future here in Chicago. And so I'm going to go, and I think that to me is a different experience I'm looking forward to. Because as, to your point about being immersed into it, I feel like, a movie like that, Star Wars, Jurassic Park, where they have these soundtracks and scores of, just that kind of probably created some of our childhood with some of, you hear the Jurassic Park theme, at least in mine. I'm like, oh yeah, 1993, that's cool. But
yep. I think that also works with Top Gun, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're right. Of all the other films we've talked about, can you name a single song or anything? I bet Top Gun, the moment you hear a couple beats or something, you're like, okay, I'm in the plane.
Yeah, right. Well, and
I'm
also
picturing him on the motorcycle driving away from her. Right. Right? Oh, you can picture all of those, you hear the song. I just gave you one snippet, and you heard the song.
Yes. Yeah,
right?
Well, and I think that there's a few movies out there. Now, obviously, it's not as much of a commitment these days with streaming and everything, but back in the day with CDs, right? I remember movies that I would buy a CD for. I bought the Top Gun soundtrack, right? Because I was like, oh, this will be cool to listen to, And then, Kenny Loggins makes a lot of appearances on it. Blues Brothers, that was another soundtrack that I bought. But I think beyond really those two movies, there might be something I'm missing. But there, to your point, there's very few movies that would be, oh, you know what, I get a soundtrack. Because not only, the movie that they created or the music they created for the movie, but, some of the artists that they used in it, they did a really nice job of putting together a package. And it leaped from cinema into music. And
yeah, very much so.
All right. Well, I've taken way too much of your time. I've probably enjoyed your view more than anybody else I've had on this podcast. And I really appreciate you coming with this idea because I loved it. I loved the idea. And I actually loved the chance to get to know you a little more. And maybe if some day down the road you want to honor me with, we'll do another one of these and we'll figure out another theme to it. Because I love your perspective on all this. It's way better than my junk food thought process for movies, but I'm going to be true to myself.
Hey, I'm fine. You want to do a junk food podcast? We will talk about all the great movies that are horrible but so entertaining. I am not a purist. I am not someone who thinks great cinema is great cinema, but bad cinema is bad. No, entertainment is entertainment. The art is what is wonderful about it. So I'll be glad to do that one with you again. I am honored that you allowed me to be here. Allow me to share my passion, allow me to rant about good and bad movies and all the things I think about when I watch something or watch something on repeat, as some of them have been. And so I'm very grateful and thank you for allowing me to be here.
Well, thank you so much, Nate. Really appreciate it.
Well, that's the end of the movie for today, folks. Time to the lights come up, cleaning the popcorn out from under the seats. But what a fun episode. Thank you so much to Nate. For sharing with us, really, not only just being an airport professional, but really a movie critic. I didn't add too much to the conversation beyond now you understand. Well, if you listen to the podcast at all and you listen to my movie list, you're like, that sounds about right. But this has been a very long episode, so I will keep it short. I love Nate's idea about the podcast, so thank you, Nate, for sending that in. If you have anything you'd like to see on the podcast, please send us an email at dapodcast85@gmail.com. That's your source for all things aviation. You can follow us on TikTok, Instagram. I just put up a TikTok video of my day at EAA AirVenture, and I actually put one on Instagram as well, and I picked 2 different songs for each platform. So you can go and look at us there. All of our details on our podcast for TikTok and Instagram as Jeff Miller, as you can tell from my age, how I figure this stuff out. It's all in the show notes. So you can go and find us there and check it out. It's another area for our content. If you like the podcast, please tell a friend. I am heading down to the Great Lakes chapter of AAAE. For some reason, they always put this on during Oshkosh, which I always feel bad for my friends up in Wisconsin because a lot of them cannot make it to the airport-oriented conference. And it's funny, I was talking with a couple that actually fly TDMs out of Jacksonville, and they were talking about relationships with airports and how sometimes maybe they're not so great. And it always has me thinking that us as airport professionals, we host a conference at the same time as the largest air show in the world. But, you know, they do it for their own reasons. It's always hard, though, so you got to make the mad dash. I end up missing a few days in the front because I got to make my way up to Oshkosh. I'm going to try to go each year that I'm around in this area for sure, and even if not. So, but I'm on the road again, but was able to give out, meet some people at Oshkosh that listen to the show, so thank you so much for those people that I got a chance to connect with, gave out some podcast stickers. If you want to purchase a podcast sticker, they're on our website. That's it. Long episode. Until next time, my friends, I'll see you down the runway.